round of 8. We have 3 Zergs, 3 Terrans, 2 Protosses. If Stats win here, we've got a PvP in semis and a guaranteed Protoss in the finals. He will flip the script completely on the Maru v SpeCial grand finals that a lot of people were expecting, and it shouldn't even be surprising at this point. Like, he's just a beast.
He's so solid. I mean, that's Stats, right? We've seen him slowly choke his opponents out of games all through Legacy of the Void. He was the first Protoss player who I think really welcomed the late game. He said, I just want to defend, I want to get ahead and push it to the next stage of the game. And he's kind of building small advantages throughout a series. And he just kind of gets to this point where he's unstoppable in the late game. But more recently, we saw him take down Maru a few months ago. We've seen him take down so many amazing Terrans. He's brought back the Colossi style of play when a lot of other Protoss weren't using it in this matchup. And he's just kind of a unique problem because he is so confident playing a standard game and defending. And often I see SpeCial as someone who kind of wants to combat him on that level, and there's going to be a lot of back and forth. So I kind of feel like we might be getting some very long games.
Nick, you've covered him all season long when it comes to Korea. Final thoughts before we go into this match?
Look, I think he's a phenomenal player. He's the polar opposite of SOS. It really highlights that you can be a master of your race and look completely different from someone else in the same class. But I couldn't agree more. I think this is going to be a very long series, the opposite of what we saw earlier here today.
And Pig mentions the long games. I do hope we will see these after series number 1 because I want to see some supply, and I want to see some supply going high, guys.
All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It is time to get into our next round of 8 match. The Guardian of Guadalajara is going to go up against the Aegis from Korea.
SOS currently sits comfortably in the semifinals as he awaits his next opponent, one of these 2 players standing behind me on this stage. Our first player coming up is one of the last 2 foreign hopes left at the global finals. Juanito needs your support as he goes up against one of the most consistent Korean players of all time. Please welcome on stage, it is SpeCial and Stats.
Good afternoon, BlizzCon! I am so excited to be getting into this next series. Roddy, we have seen SpeCial make that meteoric rise, continuing to compete at the highest level of Starcraft. He had a great finish at BlizzCon last year, and here he is again.
I know a lot of people thought semifinals, that's fantastic, but that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. Well, maybe not, Nate, because here we are again. Again, SpeCial's in the quarterfinals, and he's going up against Stats, the Shield of Ire, the man he eliminated last year in the group stage of the global finals, and that obviously makes this quarterfinals even more special. No pun intended, because there is some backstory here, and I'm sure that Stats is very eager to avenge that big loss.
Yeah, I love them bringing up at the couch as well. You know, we talk about what makes Stats such a good Protoss player compared to a guy like SOS. It's not as much the crazy side. He's a master of different areas of that race, and that specialization of the talent is really awesome to see come here at BlizzCon.
Couldn't agree more, man. A lot of people were always inspired by the gameplay of Rain, who we're going to see here on stage later today, by the way, playing in that KSL versus ASL show match. That's going to be a lot of fun for everyone that loves Brood War, but a lot of people were always inspired by Rain, his strong defensive Protoss playstyle.
Yes.
Ever since he left, Stats filled that gap, and maybe perhaps even better right now. Obviously, the game has evolved. The game has changed a lot ever since, but you gotta love the way that Stats plays, because he's the opposite of a gimmicky Protoss. He will sit there, he will look at ways to defend and then outplay his opponent. No weird stuff. He's not gonna go for some crazy Void Race, you know, weird-ass builds over there. No, it's a straightforward, very strong player.
Yeah, and one of the things I really like about SpeCial is watching him play. We see a lot of these guys compete, especially the Terran versus Protoss metagame. You see a lot of these proxy strategies. We saw Maru break out a lot of these without that success against SOS earlier, but in the round of 8, or to me in the round of 16 matches, we got to see SpeCial. He opens up, he tries to feign a little bit of that aggression, not always committing to it the way that we see a player like Maru does, and his macro follow-up was so good in that series, and watching the way that he especially uses tanks, being aware of the positioning of key units like Warp Prisms carrying High Templar. I'm so excited to see this. We have a a message coming out from SpeCial here. Dream fulfilled, able to deliver keys to a house to his mother.
It's a beautiful. I mean, I think a lot of people read that. An absolutely beautiful story. And I mean, SpeCial is just, he's an awesome player, and he's absolutely fantastic to have here in the scene. We're all very, very excited to see what he plays here, but I love the analysis that you just brought. SpeCial has a lot of sort of off timings in this matchup. He has a lot of move outs where it comes to Marines that don't have stim yet. And those windows are so narrow, where either it looks like you're making a fantastic push and the Protoss just barely doesn't have enough, or your army just gets slaughtered. And that's obviously going to be a little bit risky if he makes one of those builds in game one and it backfires. Let's see if that shakes him up or not.
It's time to find out who is going to be moving on next as we begin our next round of 8 match here. You are watching the World Championship Series. Spawning in the top right, your blue Terran player representing Guadalajara, Mexico. He is SpeCial! And facing off against him, the Aegis of Korea in red. Playing for Splice, he is Stats!
All right, let's see what the Protoss versus Terran will bring us here. Of course, we already saw this map earlier, and that was crazy. I think Todd said it during his commentary. If you guys just joined in, that's not how most Protoss versus Terran games look like, okay? You don't open up with cannons, stat scouting very early. Of course, the proxies, you know, they've been dominating this matchup over the last few months for good or bad. A lot of Protoss players will say, like, you know what, I actually think I can deal with the majority of these builds. And then you've got Protosses that are on the other side of that, saying, like, it just feels like I'm always behind. But it seems that SpeCial is taking a slow and steady approach to game one here.
Yeah, I think SpeCial definitely took a look at what happened in that match with Maru. I wouldn't be surprised in a best of 5 for him to break out some play like that. But a lot of Protoss players send these very early probes to scout now too. And you're giving information with this because we've had SpeCial build that barracks somewhere, not really at the enemy's base, but just hidden to give the Protoss the impression of that. But as a Terran player, you kind of anticipate that the Protoss scouting your barracks that early in your main is going to get the fast nexus at their natural. You're not going to deal with the units being on the map that quickly. And for Stats, well, whatever his basic game plan was, he's not going to have to worry about dealing with early Reapers and not so likely dealing with early Cyclones once he sees the command center on the way.
Of course, the proxies were designed to punish the greedy Protoss players out there that would go for a 1-gate fast expand, and sometimes not even scout at all, would scout incredibly late, and only then they could react against the proxies. Now this Protoss player, like you said, Stats immediately sending out, he runs to get an SCV, he got very close to getting it, but the Reaper will save his body. I mean, Protoss players have just played it a little more safe to say, okay, we're okay with losing some resources early on, but let's just see if Terran is proxying or not. If they are, we're staying on one base. If they're not, then we can still go for a 1-gate fast expand, even if it's delayed a tiny bit.
Yeah, that probe scout back in style. Gets 2 hits with the Adept. If he was able to, I was going to say, if that Shade follows the Reaper and he doesn't go down the cliff, he could deny the scouting of the Terran player. And we do have an SCV hiding in the southeast. That factory is about to finish.
Maybe a Hellion drop here. I think that's a possibility. Of course, it could also just be Cyclone Marine in the front and a Liberator in the main base. That is a potential as well. We'll see where SpeCial takes this build.
And he is going to proxy that starport in the southeast corner of the map. Adept's going to pick off that weak SCV. Will come up the ramp, sees the reactor, sees the factory. There's just that Marine there. You don't see the starport, but you're not 100% certain it could be built just a little bit north of where that factory is.
If it's so far away, it could also be Cloak Banshees, I feel, right? Because it doesn't really make much sense if you want to go for any sort of medevac drop to build it this far away, because you don't really save yourself a lot of time. And of course, there is a downside for Terran to build your starport that far outside of your main base.
You know, as we see here, SpeCial going to get bullied a little bit. He builds that one Hellion, but Hellions aren't really what you want to be building to defend against this type of poke from the Protoss player, so it's an awkward spot. The Cyclone's going to start up now. The Reaper's at the front, but not really a lot of opportunity. And there, the Adept gets the full scout. Sees a second barracks in production. No starport, and then suddenly some alarm bells should be ringing for Stats.
This is already becoming a little bit painful here, though, for SpeCial. I mean, not having a bunker, he's been losing quite a few SCVs, a couple of Marines have gone down. Knowing that there is a Hellion out on the map is very nice as well. Sure, the Reaper is still alive and trying to be as annoying as possible. Might get a work in there. Nah, good job so far by Stats, using his Stalkers in the best way possible. Now SpeCial gets the bunker, but it's safe to say that bunker was a little too late.
And as our wonderful observer showed us, that Reaper went down, actually kind of blocked the robotics facility from being built, so he didn't see that start up. There can, of course, always be the assumption from a Terran that you're going to get a little bit of defensive play with a Robo because there's a Twilight Council, but information, very important. There we have Cloak on the way, a supply block, delaying that Banshee. These are the types of things, a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there, would give the Protoss the ability to defend these attacks.
And look at Stats, he really doesn't have much to worry about right now. He's trying to go up to 3 bases already. We'll end up losing that probe, so that's a nice little pickup for SpeCial. Of course, the Reaper does go down in the process, but it's safe to say that SpeCial needs to start dealing some economic damage. I don't know if he's going to combine it with a Marine tank move out and then Banshees, if he keeps everything together or not. But if this game goes the way, or continues the way it currently is going, 3 minutes from now on, Stats is going to have a ridiculous Protoss army of 1 million Zealots, a bunch of Stalkers, they've got upgrades, and then just a few Marines and tanks and a Banshee or 2 are simply not going to cut it. SpeCial needs to slow down Stats.
Yeah, this Banshee really needs to hit pay dirt on the assault. I mean, if we look back at SpeCial's base, we were just taking a look. The second barracks did not see a tech lab there. Stim is not on the way. The late game follow-ups that a Terran player needs to win a long match versus Protoss are not on the way. We don't have engineering bays getting upgrades. We do have another command center on the way, but how much is that going to help if, as you said, we get this 1-1 going into 2-2 charge, blink against Marines that don't have Stim with no starport back home? How are you going to get medevacs out to deal with a defensive attack? How are you going to leave your base as a Terran player?
The Shield of Ire living up to his name. I mean, there are observers in defensive positions. He's got Stalkers in both bases as well. It really feels that Stats was expecting a Cloak Banshee. He just moved out, so that's a little bit painful. There's no shield battery here either. That means a couple of probes will go down. But Nate, if you open up with Cloak Banshees as a Terran player, you're hoping for a little more than just 3 probes.
Yeah, I think you get a little bit happy once you hit that 5+ mark, but for what he invested in not having the starport at home, I think is really the big kicker there. It's definitely painful to not have the ability to heal those Marines. Stim is on the way, double engineering bay is on the way, but he's still got this little army out. He doesn't really have an escape button here if he gets overwhelmed.
This is a key moment right here. SpeCial wants to get a lot done with this army. Now Stats' army is not massive yet, but Charge is almost done. If SpeCial gets the Nexus, I would say that's good enough because he's got a command center going up at home as well.
That's a really huge pickoff. And now the Stalkers are going to blink onto the tanks. He gets one of the south side of the Marines with that Cyclone unloading, and he gets rid of both siege tanks. Now SpeCial is going to focus fire.
Oh
the Nexus, really good pickoff here, delaying the economy of the Protoss. That Immortal on the south side should be able to push the rest of this away, but maybe he's going to get it. The Stalkers aren't next to it anymore. The Cyclone getting that high damage output in. It's so close. Bakes into the shield battery at the last possible second with 3 hit points in a dream.
What a phenomenal trade, nevertheless, here for SpeCial, guys. Make no mistake, that was one of those armies where if you traded army for army, you're like, oh, okay, at least I didn't get slaughtered. If you get the Nexus, you're like, at least I got economic damage done. He got the Nexus, and he traded out a lot of units there as well. Stats was obviously a little bit surprised by that army showing up. He didn't want to lose his Nexus. He's like, oh my god, it's taking so much damage. He just goes for that crazy blink forward, but that's where Stalkers are quite vulnerable, and that's why I end up losing so many of them so quickly.
Yeah, getting that economic damage is really important in this scenario because we've got 2-2 upgrades on the way for the Protoss. SpeCial is on his way to 1-1. It's not uncommon to be behind in those upgrades as a Terran, but that's where you need to have the economic lead so that you can outproduce your opponent, overwhelm that heavily upgraded Zealot army, especially when things like Guardian Shield come into play on top of that.
And don't forget that he picked up so many Stalkers. Those Stalkers are going to have to be replaced again as well. And this is a style that in Protoss in general doesn't have too many gases, so you don't have that much income. But even if you only use 3 assimilators, if you only build Zealots, right, eventually you're going to be floating some gas, so then you can get ready for that transition. That was an absolutely phenomenal move out for SpeCial. It paid off in a very big way. I was very nervous when he started the move out because the early game was not pretty. He was slowed down a lot, he was supply blocked for a little bit. One Banshee already went down, but I mean, that was a massive return of investment in the end.
Yeah, so we had the Banshee poking in the northwest side, picked off there as the observer's able to follow. Now we do have a couple of missile turrets guarding the main base of SpeCial. In a lot of these situations, you have to be really careful about the Protoss moving into your base, pulling your army forward, and then hitting you with that War Prism, getting a couple of extra Zealots inside the mineral line. You look away for 3 seconds, your SCVs get ripped to pieces. It's a lot like those Banshees. You got to be on top of the harass.
Seems like Stats is going to try like, all right, if you leave a couple of units in your main base, let's see how much you actually have on the ground. But the extra depots going down there, the sensor tower finishing up. Sure, the upgrades will complete soon for Stats, but I think if SpeCial puts his bio units in a good position, that's a lot of Zealots, but it's not an insane amount of Zealots.
Yeah. I actually like having a couple of these buildings spattered around here as well. That supply depot has the possibility to draw the units forward. It's going to block the pathing, prevent the surround as easily from the Zealots. He has a couple of Widow Mines mixed in here too, and now he's going to kite back. We see a huge splash damage from the mines going on to those Zealots. They're going to continue to push forward with those 2-2 upgrades. Special loaded up one of his medevacs on accident during the course of this fight, but even with the Guardian Shield, he's pulling the SCVs now. They're trying to overwhelm this. That War Prism is going to be so crucial. Huge wave of Zealots getting added to this, but is it going to be enough? The Marines have held strong so far. He has not been able to get on top of the Bio Army. Reinforcements come out of the main base of Special, and he is going to overwhelm this attack.
He's going to be able to pick off a couple of these Stalkers as well. The Immortal will not get saved, and only 14 SCVs went down.
But he still has 55. He's got plenty of economy.
Yes, absolutely, totally fine. Beautiful micro there defensively by SpeCial. I love how he stimmed very quickly, picked off a couple of Zealots, let the Zealots run into the mines, and immediately ran very far away from the sentries, the Stalkers, and the Immortals. So it was just Zealots fighting all those bio units. That was a beautiful hold. Yep. Magnificent hold. SpeCial is in an excellent position here in Game 1.
Yeah, almost forgot to mention those ranged units will shoot at that supply depot you put up front as well. Not being able to get the Prism in during that attack. SpeCial really doing a great job of crossing the T's and dotting the I's in this match. Now we see him want to go for the counterattack and be careful as medevacs are very low on energy as he stims forward. That's a lot of Protoss to push in against.
Exactly, I would be sad to see SpeCial overcommit here. I don't think he has to. There's a Widow Mine in the mix here as well. That's going to do a little bit of damage to all these Zealots. 9 probes went down during all of this, so I assume there was a mine drop there on the left side. So now I love the move out. SpeCial wasn't looking to fight that big Protoss army. Like you said, we're both looking at each other and we're like, I don't know if you want to take that fight. You just said hold. It was a distraction maneuver, got more economic damage done on the left side. SpeCial's playing one hell of a game so far.
I really like the adjustments that SpeCial's made here. If you were studying his matches in the round of 16, you saw the siege tank play come out in full force from him. He used a lot of those with his army. Naturally, the Zealots getting to close in on your units with charge is going to make that difficult to deal with, but I love that he's been playing with these Widow Mines. He's had a lot of the support lines to fall back onto, and he has the drop hitting at the same time as his army moving out. We see those Zealots obliterated by the Widow Mines, and those stylistic adjustments from SpeCial have been helping him so much. If his bio gets on top of those Stalkers and Sentries, they are all dead. A ton of resources lost. The drop is cleaned up, but, well, that
not
army,
a victory.
Yeah, he's doing great. As our friend at the couch was saying, he wanted to see some supply, and it is getting pretty high for our Mexican Terran player.
A Terran player being up 40, almost 50 supply over a Protoss. Now, sometimes that means the game is over. Sometimes you get like, well, there are Disruptors, there's Psystorm. No, none of that. It's just the Gateway units. There's an Immortal in the mix every now and then. But SpeCial has put himself in an incredible position. His micronade has been fantastic against the Zealots. He always stays out of range of the Stalkers, of the Immortals, and the Sentries. But he does a really good job in softening up that Zealot ball. Then he just goes through it. And the moment the Zealots are gone, I mean, the rest of that Protoss army is no match for those Marines and Marauders.
Then we get a bird's eye view here from SpeCial. Sees trying to deal with the War Prism as the siege tank at that third is picked off. We have the SCVs getting pulled. At the same time, he's looking forward. He's setting up the mine drop. He's moving his army towards the south side. He wants to deny that next expansion he scouted earlier, but this is where it gets really tricky. A lot of his bio is still a bit hurt from the previous fight. There's only 2 medevacs with this army, and they don't have any energy, Roddy. If he stims, this is not going to get healed.
Yeah, SpeCial has to be a tiny bit careful because obviously now he's losing SCVs again, and he was splitting himself pretty thin, and that's okay as long as he doesn't lose the big engagement. There are not that many medevacs in the mix, like you said. It would be better for SpeCial to just stay back a little bit. He doesn't have to end the game right now. No. There is no Storm on the way. There is no double Robo Disrupt attack or Colossus on the way or anything crazy that Pros could do. It's just more of the same, and if it's just more of the same, just keep defending because you're doing great.
Yeah, it needs to siege up these Liberators now. The Planetary Fortress is on the way. Positioning his army a bit in that pocket corner is going to be hard to get away from the Liberators. Needs to focus those down with the Stalkers, but with all of this support from SpeCial's army, he's doing a good job of blasting down a lot of this. That Planetary is about to finish up and give a huge boost in the damage to this army for SpeCial. And we can see now the Zealots are all gone. Immortals going to be picked up at the last moment by that Prism, and that means the Stalkers will die, and SpeCial will hold with a higher supply.
It's a bloodbath, Nate. It's a bloodbath. There are so many units going down on both sides, and again 11 SCVs went down. Seems like Stats was trying to be annoying on the top side of the map as well with a couple of Zealots. Now Stats realizes, okay, this is a 4-base Terran. There's a Planetary in the mix as well. I gotta transition. Whether I want to or not, Zealots are simply not gonna win me this game anymore. Will they win a battle? Sure. Will they be able to harass it a little bit? Absolutely. But he needs something else, because with 4 bases, Terran's bio ball is gonna be incredibly big. There's gonna be too many mines. He needs something else. It could be Colossus, but Disruptors is perfectly fine there as well.
Yeah.
I would almost even say, since his supply is down, army supply that is, I would probably go Disruptors here.
Yeah, got to be careful with the number of Zealots running up in front with those two. But here the Prism wants to
He
make
lost
another
most
poke.
of them.
He doesn't really have any hit points on this, so as soon as those shields are gone, that Prism is going to die. Mine drop at the south side of the map. There is no reaction so far, and the probes are going to get blown up. 7 workers picked off. There's the Zealots. He's going to go back down towards the 3rd position once again, gets a good view of the SCVs. Prism is still alive. 3 of the Zealots are saved, and that means that Stats can always poke back as the medevac gets picked off.
So 2 Disruptors are on the way. Those could be safety Disruptors. I think doing both is totally fine, but of course for Stats, it's a little bit scary because he has lost insane amount of units this game.
So close.
That Prism has been alive for a very long time, by the way. Stats did an excellent job in babysitting it.
That's the OG Prism that tried to get into the main before that first fight at the 3rd base, but feels like forever and a half ago. So another mine drop is going to move out towards the north side, and those Disruptors coming out. Focusing so heavily on those upgrades, by the way. The fast double forge. He's getting all the shield upgrades, too. Level 2 finishing up here. Wants to have as powerful of an army as he possibly can, starting level 3 shields immediately after. But yeah, you said it, going a lot into Disruptors, and that means we're going to have a few more Stalkers to mix in here as well. Those Widow Mines won't be quite as useful in the actual army fights later on.
There's obviously a chance. Oh, this mine drop could potentially hurt a lot. Well, somehow I think Stats got quite lucky there with only a couple of probes going down. But yeah, the Liberator on the south side is also getting a couple of workers, and all of this does pile up. Can we take a look at the amount of workers that went down on both sides? Because I feel they both did an excellent job in harassing in this game.
43 SCVs and 36 probes have died in the making of this film so far, and we are not at the finish yet, Roddy. It's been, as you put it so aptly, a bit of a bloodbath this match, and it's only game 1. Good series so far out of these two.
That Observer spots those 2 medevacs, and that could become a little bit painful. Stats blinks forward immediately. He gets one of them. Can he get the second one too? With the Zealots on the ground, he should be able to. That's a very nice little pickup. This buys time. Look at Stats' supply. He's maxed out. How is he maxed out? He's also attacking on the south side.
That Planetary Fortress can't beat a whole army on its own. The Liberators are going to siege up defensively by the natural expansion, but once Stats gets into this position, we have to keep in mind there's 4 Disruptors with this army. If you try to dive on top of this, you can't do the Disruptors defensively. Get a nice chunk of that army. He's going to keep pushing it back. Both Disruptors appear to be on cooldown at home for Stats as he's going for a little bit of a base trade here. We do not have any more Disruptors in production. These 2 have to hold the door from this army of SpeCial while Stats continues to push his way towards the main base of SpeCial.
SpeCial supply is plummeting though. This is starting to become a little bit scary. A couple of those mines will get picked off as well. One Disruptor could fire in his army, but good job there by SpeCial sniping it down. But is there enough Terran here? I mean, he's been losing almost everything at home.
Now we have the Dark Templar coming in. We talked about this, actually kind of happened weirdly enough last week. You have to be careful of the base trade, those scans, the orbital commands. The one in the main, the natural, and the 3rd are gone. It's just that base on the top side of the map. Don't know if he repositioned those, but he does not have a whole lot to deal with. These invisible units really need to clear out the DTs, and Stats doing a really intelligent job of just continuing to bring these in and add them to the army.
Those are expensive defensive warpins though by Stats, but Stats could recall. He could try to save that base on the south side of the map if he wants to. He is recalling.
And he's going to go right on top of that army, fence the base, and that is it. GG Stats is able to close out game number 1.
Wow, what a game. And it really felt that SpeCial did so many things right. It felt like the very start wasn't as pretty, but the first move out, it really felt that he was pushing the game and he was forcing Stats to make a couple of decisions that Stats wasn't that comfortable with, being hyper-aggressive with Zealots, with Stalkers, with Immortals, running into concaves, and it felt that SpeCial won battle after battle, yet somehow ended up losing the war.
Just such a fist fight going between these 2 players. The harass was great on both sides. I thought SpeCial did a really good job of dealing with the Warp Prism, trying to get inside of the main base. It's always one of your biggest fears as a Terran, getting those Warp Pins on your production. But yeah, the end of that game, just getting so hectic, caught off a little bit on the side, the army able to pick off the Planetary and then wedge itself between the natural and the 3rd. Diving on that when there's Disruptors, well, That's always a huge gamble, Kev.
It's one of those games where I look at it and I'm like, I cannot believe that Stats won that actually. It really felt that his build was going to start running out of steam. He lost a couple of fights pretty decisively even. And of course he always picked up more than a handful of SCVs. Often 10 plus SCVs went down. That's nice, but the later in the game, the less that matters. If SpeCial's still sitting on 50 workers or more, that's kind of damage that a Terran can normally take. But it yet seemed impossible at any given moment for SpeCial to grab all of his forces, run to the other side of the map and end the game. Because if he would have done that, that Prism that you mentioned would have wiped in 5 Zealots and would have tore up all of his other SCVs. So fantastic game by SpeCial, but an insane game by Stats.
Interested to see if either of these players shake it up as we make our way into game 2. The compositions varying. Both of these players have shown that they have a lot of range, but let us get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you're having a wonderful BlizzCon so far as we continue on our second quarterfinal. In the top left of Parasite, we have the blue Terran player. He is SpeCial! And leading the series in the southeast, our red Protoss player. Give it up for Stats!
We have loaded into Parasite, and that's a map that we haven't seen that much yet here at the WCS Global Finals, not in the round of 16, and we didn't see it in our first series of the day either. I think this is quite a nice map for Stats. If you think about the utility that Stalkers and Zealots bring to this matchup, you think about the way that SpeCial likes to play it, where he often has these tiny move-outs with 8-9 Marines, a tank and a Cyclone, where he tries to get himself in a good position. That's impossible on a map as large as Parasite. It felt hard for SpeCial to end the game on Lost and Found. How do you end the game here unless you just have the ultimate Dream Terran army?
Yeah, it's going to be tricky, and we're seeing SpeCial try to set the pace for this second map very early on. The probe comes in early, gets a couple of quick hits on these SCVs, lining things up for the potential 2-shot from an Adept that gets in later. He sees no barracks, double gas. It says proxy, but SpeCial this game is trying to kind of leverage that fear that the Protoss might have. Well, okay, it could be by my 3rd, it could be by my 4th, could be just outside my natural if you're really crazy. But for SpeCial, he's keeping it a little bit closer to the chest. He's looking for mostly just to disrupt what the Protoss wants to do build order-wise. He doesn't want him to go for the fast gateway. He can still be aggressive with this if he wants, but he's not super committed.
Well, Stats obviously scouted. He knows that SpeCial's on one base, and he's like, well, in that case, I could stay on one base as well. And there is a potential here for a proxy gateway, but it could also just be a Stargate, of course. SpeCial and Stats played against each other just a couple of months ago at a pretty big tournament called GSL vs. the World, where Game 2 looked a little similar to this one. It was an acid plant. SpeCial opened up in an aggressive way, yet with the idea to always expand behind it. Did he get damage done? Absolutely. Stats almost ignored it and said, you can do some damage, I'm just going to go ahead and try to end the game, and he did. And I'm sure that's a game that SpeCial did not forget about that. So whatever his plan is, aggressively, make sure you're safe and solid at home.
Yeah, now we have the Reaper coming across. We talk about that. He has the Zealot, he has the Adept ready to try and block shots. Typically speaking, when you do the super aggressive version of this, your Reaper is looking to get a couple of kills. But because Parasite is so large of a map, and he didn't really proxy this that far forward, there's plenty of defenses ready in time. Stats is not really concerned about this. He's got everything he needs to defend. Now it comes down to what is he going to do on the back against this. We have a Cyclone on the way. He sees the Stalkers coming, and of course we have that Oracle being chrono boosted as well.
Did SpeCial actually see the natural yet of Stats? Can we confirm this? This is the first time he sees it. And I'm a little bit worried. There really isn't much at home, right? It's the first Cyclone. Okay, the Marine does spot the Stargate, but this is one of those moments where is there enough in the main base? There is a single Cyclone, but Nate, you as a Terran player knows that it takes a long time for a single Cyclone to take care of an Oracle.
I believe it takes the full duration of that lock-on, which is a very long time. So putting the SCVs on the repair says, okay, if you want to try to focus those down, you can go for it. But in the meantime, actually doesn't really take too much damage, gets all things said and done, and then as I said, it takes a really long time to kill anything with one Cyclone shooting up, at least on this patch, Kev. We do have another Cyclone coming out. We've got the reactor that was built there, so a lot of production here. These units for Stats, let's be careful if these go too far up towards that ramp. That's when the weird proxy actually hugely benefits you, as you can pinch the army of the Protoss player.
With 2 Cyclones, I think SpeCial is going to be fine here. Stats is playing a dangerous game because he knows that SpeCial is still on 1 base. So you should also know that there could be something happening behind his units. And I think as a Protoss player, it's always a little bit scary when you're the one who's expanding, but your units are that far out on the map that there could be a Terran army between your units and your expand, because that's where things become quite awkward.
Yeah, and that's the last thing that you want to happen, is to get caught off guard like that. Stats now to actually find the production of SpeCial. We have those Cyclones on the right side. It's a little bit awkward. I mean, at this point, if you could bring all your Cyclones out together, the odds of all these units getting away are pretty slim. So opportunity abundant. Widowmine's going to come up to follow this. The Cyclones could try to lock on. Might be looking for the already weak Oracle. These ones should be able to get out of the range.
The stasis is very, very scary there. Of course, Stats doesn't have to go too crazy here. The only bad thing here for our Protoss is that he's even in workers. That's not that common. Now extra Stalkers show up, but the Cyclones and Vikings are still here. So the Oracle gets gunned down, and the other one is very low in HP as well. And suddenly, I'm kind of starting to feel this position from SpeCial, Nate.
I really like the Viking usage early on from SpeCial. In a scenario like this, where it's a bit scrappy, there's not a ton of units, those Vikings are really good at bullying away Oracles from diving on top of you. Also, Phoenix from trying to lift your units. And if you need to land those Vikings, they're actually really good versus Stalkers. And in the early game, they can soak decently, but that Stasis Ward, great trap, grabbing the army of SpeCial, and being pinch snapped like that, he's going to lose the Cyclone. The Vikings will have to run away. They don't have anywhere to safely make another play. One of these Cyclones actually got grabbed by the one back home. There's a Widowmine close, but not close enough to save it. SCV's not able to get there to repair in time. And Stats, a lot of units coming out here to fight. Vikings do good damage, but they don't have a lot of health.
The other Cyclone should be free anytime soon, but one more Cyclone will bite the dust here. There is at least a Widowmine that's going to help a little bit. The Vikings and Cyclones, this is a very important battle for SpeCial. Ends up losing another Cyclone, then there's one more Stasis as well.
The Widowmine is going to trigger it, so the rest of the army is fine. The Stalkers want to focus down the Cyclones if they can. That landed Viking adds in a decent bit of damage. And it looks like, man, this series is just, it's just non-stop fighting on both sides from start to finish. And it doesn't look like Stats wants to end anytime soon. He's just been pumping out those Stalkers back home. He's only now just starting the robotics facility in the Twilight, but he's going to get his third behind it. So he says, all right, I'll get another wave of Stalkers, see what I can do, because all your production is very exposed. And after that, we'll go somewhere else. But with the Oracle dead, the high ground vision is gone. And that means that Stats has to be very careful with how he plays these ramps.
But it's very important that he also keeps track of the army of SpeCial. You don't want to have 5 or 6 Stalkers just sitting in your natural and then those Cyclones show up, because that's when it becomes very, very tricky to micro against it. He's looking for openings. SpeCial's not going to give him an opening, but SpeCial has a lot of SCVs here just repairing this army. These are SCVs that are currently not mining. So obviously economically Stats is doing quite well, as the graph showed us before too. I mean, this is such a bizarre, unique game because there is so much movement with just simple gateway units before Blink is even close to finishing up.
And this is terrifying. All of SpeCial's production completely exposed to Stats because he wants to go for this big counterattack. We do have Immortals being chrono boosted out right now. Blink is on the way, and SpeCial is putting himself in a very awkward spot.
The pylon? I would go for the pylon probably here, right?
Okay, he's going to force the recall. This is a really important moment. If he's able to get that, the Immortal's not out! And it's just Cyclones versus Stalkers, and maybe a probe or two here. As another pylon's about to finish, the Immortal will be out in just a little bit of time, but has he gotten enough damage out? If he focus fires it, the Cyclones take a lot from it, but they can kill it quickly too, and he's gonna get the Immortal. SCV's repairing everything that they can. The probes have been pulled off the line to try and shut this down. Only 3 Cyclones remain. More Stalkers getting warped in, and it looks like SpeCial's army will finally be routed.
I mean, Stats holds, but obviously at the cost of 8 probes. He lost the pylon, lost the Immortal that he just built, and he's just kind of in an awkward spot now. But he has created a lot of freedom for himself. That was the scary push. That was the only push that SpeCial was going to be able to make in the upcoming minutes of this game. And it's quite rare that you can talk about minutes in a game of Starcraft 2, but this is just going to take a very long time for the Mexican Terran to even think about moving out again. He didn't even start Stim yet. He has to float his buildings home. So Stats, even though he took quite a bit of damage, he has created an immense amount of freedom for himself.
And I wonder if he's going to cancel these units. No, he'll come out and try to fight against this a bit. He wants to keep that factory where it is, doesn't want to lose the units that are coming out of it. The Stalkers are going to try to trade out as best they can. Blink is 6 seconds away from finishing, so after this should be an easy escape path for Stats to get out of here.
Oh, look at that, 4 barracks at once being thrown up as well. One more Cyclone gets picked off there. Good micro, of course, with the Stalkers. Stats was already very active with the Stalkers before they had Blink, so obviously you can trust on him the moment he does have Blink. That is going to be even more annoying and much of a nuisance, but once again, it's just gonna take so long for Special. This is very uncommon, Nate. This doesn't even feel like a game of Starcraft right now, where you look at your main, you're like, it feels kind of like an even game, but I just can't do anything for so long, and that's because of the strategy he chose early on.
Yep. I mean, when you limit yourself like this, because he hasn't started Stim yet, the Protoss player has the robotics facility, the option is there for Stats to try and blink up into the main base. I mean, look at where he's building this next command center. Even if the Observer comes by, he doesn't even need to blink up. He could just kill that command center from the low ground.
He has a bunker, but he has
oh
no bio
my god, Stim
units.
is right here too!
Oh, I mean, with all the SCVs here, forward blink, the Cyclone's gonna get picked off almost immediately. That Viking will get picked off as well. It's just Stalkers and one Immortal. The biggest problem is there's only 2 Marines on the side of Special.
Yep, and it's just that one Marine in a bunker trying to hold the door for him. GG Stats moves up 2-0.
What a hectic, chaotic game where the fighting felt like it never ended. A couple of buildings in the middle of the map, and Stalkers and Cyclones were just dancing with each other until one side got a little more tired than the other. And I mean, Stats is playing fantastic so far. He's playing aggressive, more aggressive than I expected him to be, but there is always a backup plan for him, and that's what makes him such a phenomenal Protoss player.
Whenever you play Cyclone-based openers against Protoss, you have to be thinking about that transition. It is so hard to make that switch. Reactor-produced Cyclones are very, very expensive. Getting the damage on the probes was nice, but the third base, the economy, really put Stats in a position where he could easily pump out tons of units. And because the barracks was in that hidden spot, we talk about messing with the Protoss' state of mind. You're trying to throw them off, deny information from them. He couldn't immediately just start a tech lab and get Stim. He had to fly it all the way back. He had to start 4 more barracks in his main base. And even the starport doesn't get to contribute because it has to fly home too. So it's a rough spot to be in, but that's the risk that you take as a Terran when you want to do that. You can do that proxy factory, get a second one in your main after, maybe try to move into bio a bit more quickly, but then you also still run the risk of getting attacked before Stim. There's a whole lot of things you need to take into account when you play these builds out, and Stats read it and responded perfectly.
Yeah, I do think that Special looked at Parasite as one of the maps where if I don't win that, that's okay, but I think Lost and Found was one where he probably almost counted. Yeah, where he needed it and he probably counted on the win as well. But now we should be loading into a map that should be slightly more favorable for our Mexican Terran player. And let's see if he can make the impossible happen and turn this around.
All right, let's see what he's got. We are on blue shift in the northeast. We have our blue Terran player down 0-2, needs your support. He's Special! Facing off against this Korean Titan in the southwest wearing red, he is Stats!
We already saw an SCV being sent out, and that means that once again we are looking at a barracks being built outside of the main base of our Terran. But of course the follow-up I think is the real interesting part here. There are some crazy options possible, crazy one base builds as well. One of the nice things for Terran players when they try to be very aggressive on blue shift is that A, the Reaper can always hop into the main base from this side, which means you can pull units out of position, and B, there is no ramp going into the natural. But we've seen these Korean Protoss players, man, they seem to be okay with the idea, like, all right, Terran is one base, we are one base, let's play the game from there.
Yep, and of course we have that fast probe scout coming in, poking a lot of these SCVs. We've seen this before as well with some of the pylon blocks being put on the ramp potentially, always an option. It really depends on how aggressive the Protoss wants to be, in what way do they want to be aggressive. So far it's that fast Zealot, you want it to body block, get in the way of the Reaper, play with the SimCity a little bit, get that cybernetics core, and then you make your next call. What are we going to go into? Will it be the Blink Stalkers that we saw used against Maru? Is it going to be that Stargate that he went for in the last game? And the factory will be built at home. This is important to note. We've seen a lot of crazy shenanigans when it comes to proxies versus Protoss, but Special has always been just a little bit more on the conservative side when it comes to these builds than a player like Maru.
Yeah, Stats once again building one of his pylons in the middle of the map. We'll keep a close eye on that. The Adept is in production. It's being chrono boosted out. Where is that Zealot? The Zealot is over here, right next to the Nexus. Gets his swipe off, actually. That's already quite nice, because that means that this Reaper can take some less risk. And Special's actually not going to get a single worker here. Not even a single shot.
So Special's other way of trying to have a little bit of damage early on here is he's going to go for that block on the natural of Stats. So he says, yeah, I don't get any damage done against you, but I'm still going to delay your expansion. I'll try to get something here anyway. This is a really nice scout. The Reaper on the way back spots the Stargate. He's already got the Cyclone on the way. He's building I mean, he's got the starport as well, so maybe we'll see him go for that fast Viking again with an early Cyclone. Should be able to defend just fine, but as we saw in the last game, it can still be tricky. Having the production in your main, though, will definitely make holding a counterattack a lot easier.
Absolutely, but once again, trying to secure the low ground is a little bit more difficult. This is one of those maps where there is no ramp, and that means that Stalkers will shine. In the beginning of the game, Terran players, basically you need a bunker or you're going to get out-microed by Stalkers. There isn't really any other option until you maybe get a tank out, but that just takes quite some time. And obviously tanks can be a little bit immobile, and if you have very few units to work with, that's often a hard call to make as well. We'll see. For now, of course, as long as SpeCial stays on top of this ramp, he's going to be fine. But Stats is not a stubborn player. He also knows when he can and cannot do damage, immediately expands on the other side of the map.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good call. He's taking advantage of the opportunity here. The opponent's not as exposed, and he's not ready to jump straight into that mineral line. He does not want to eat a shot from a mine. Losing the Oracle early on here would be really, really difficult for Stats, as that Oracle builds its value over time. You can get the tags at Revelation to keep tabs on the army. Of course, you can always run around and try to pick off stray units, making production structures, command centers, all sorts of good stuff.
It's quite interesting as well. Of course, last year SpeCial was able to defeat Stats in the group stage with a 2-1 victory. Since that moment, he has not won a map anymore against Stats. They met in an online tournament 2-0. They met in a GSL qualifier 2-0. And they met a few months ago at GSL vs. the World 3-0, now 2-0 again. Those are things players are aware of it. That starts going through your mind as well. So it's obviously very difficult to stay calm and composed here, where it feels like you're going up against a wall. I mean, the Shield of Ire for a reason. Stats is looking very strong.
Widowmine picked off on the map. Cyclones are going to come out here, try to bully those Stalkers away. Need to be cautious. You never know how many units are going to come running towards you. You don't want to fight with just those two Cyclones, get caught off guard by the warp-in reinforcements and Graviton beamed. But this is tricky. SCVs are coming down to mine this base. I think, yeah, good play. Immediately pulls more towards the Cyclones. Doesn't want to get stuck the way he did last game. That's
very nice, because the Stalkers are now in a very awkward spot as well. Is Stats paying attention to these Stalkers? The answer is no, he's not.
2 Stalkers picked off by those Cyclones. A huge amount of the damage that would do so well against these Cyclones. Removed. He could stop, get rid of this, get rid of the pylon, turn around.
Viking is a very stubborn Viking.
We can't see without you. Oh, well, he's just going to poke towards the front of the ramp. The Viking is still nice to try and bully away these air units, but he's going to land it. No, the stasis trap! Oh!
Well, at least it's a force field, so the rest of the army is safe.
Guys, just wait. It's fine. They can't get... I can't move, but they can't get through me to you. It's all good.
It's a little bit dangerous now that pylon is still in the middle of the map as well. Obviously, there's one more stasis. This is something that SpeCial can technically see, but it's quite hard to see as well. He has to be very careful. That Stalker count is getting very, very high. He's trying to renew the stasis. SpeCial should go home, Nate.
And here we have that Phoenix comes, grabs one of the Cyclones, going to be able to pull back. We see all those Cyclones on
more
low.
SCVs?
Very low. Yeah, he wants all the repairs, but there's still another stasis ward. Even if you scan, you have to be able to click underneath, and it's like, well, you know what? I will take the path less traveled by.
That's obviously quite smart as well, because the Stalkers right now, they would always be able to get a volley or two off, and that has a massive impact, because sure, there are SCVs, but it takes a while. Widowmine's coming in as well. SpeCial's just putting it all on the line here. His BlizzCon tournament live. He needs to do serious work with his army.
Yeah, this is a bold play, but he's going to be able to, as we said, circumvent those stasis wards. He has a Marine running on the top side to trigger those.
He saw the other one too with the scan.
Yeah, you have to be really careful about the way you keep those Cyclones spread. That scan's really important. It's going to focus down that stasis ward, and we do have 2 shield batteries rejuvenating the defensive capabilities of these Protoss units, but so many Cyclones are going to get up front and start blasting away at this Protoss. We have tons of SCVs repairing. SpeCial is starting to carve through the Protoss core of defense, and now the next battery taken down. He's pushed them all the way to the natural. Widowmines are coming up towards the front. He's still got the landed Viking as well.
The problem is he's losing more and more SCVs at home. 2 Oracles and a Phoenix has showed up in the main base. Stats is going to try to fight here on the low ground. I almost feel that maybe Stats could have just gone to the high ground for a bit. He wants to fight with the pros, but the DPS is too high. That's too many Cyclones. There are Widowmines in the mix, but of course Stats could always warp in a sentry, and with a sentry, he will be safe in his main base.
This is such an awkward position to be in. Stats actually gets supply blocked now, so he has that sentry, but he needs to warp in a few pylons if he wants to bring anything in. And his units on the other side are out of energy. It's like Oracle's it's like, yeah, you gotta put another quarter in to activate the kill ray, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's very smart for SpeCial to now go home and still...
GG! SpeCial strikes back, gets himself on the board. 2-1 right now with a lead for Stats, but Man, that killer instinct by him to recognize, I really think the trigger moment was you get those two stalkers that are going around the ramp, and you realize, hey, we're both playing low economy here. This is a huge opportunity for me to just bring everything over, and not having the production exposed as he did on Parasite really paid off with huge dividends for SpeCial, and nice to see Dog still got some fight in him.
Absolutely, he's not giving up just yet. I think it was an awesome game, getting those two stalkers so decisive, pulling more SCVs, knowing that obviously what goes for Terran in the previous game also goes for Protoss here. If you expand that late, if you make that many gateway units, if you make a Stargate, you don't have power units at home, you don't have Immortals or Disruptors or anything crazy. No, it's just Stalkers. Stalkers without Blink, and that's where Cyclones can absolutely shine if they get the fight they're looking for.
Yeah, really great play, and I gotta say I love that he's been supplementing a lot of these forces with those Vikings as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue this series in a short moment. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're watching the World Championship Series.
Global Finals are brought to you in part by Republic of Gamers, Course, T-Mobile, SSD, and NVIDIA.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to BlizzCon at the World Championship Series Global Finals. We got to look at that wonderful Legends Abundant 20 see for this, the most competitive game you will ever live, StarCraft 2, and we are currently at a 2-1 map score in stats. Our Korean Protoss against SpeCial, our Mexican, has been a bloodbath of a series so far, Rotterdam, and I can't wait to see how it ends.
The games have been very messy and very scrappy, but right, and I think as StarCraft fans, that's all you want when you watch a game. You don't want to know who wins at minute 3 and then it gets dragged out. No, these are very, very competitive.
Trick, and as we kick off our next map here on Acid Plane, give a cheer for our blue Terran player, down 1-2. He needs your support. He's SpeCial. And on the other side, his opponent, one map win away, sir, to that coveted World Championship title. He is
Stats, of course, still feel pretty confident with the way that he's been playing this week, but must be nice for SpeCial, finally snapping that loss streak. Of course, he had that, then he lost 9 maps in a row against this man. Until that game, should be a lot of momentum in your favor right now.
It's got to feel great, and he's been playing out very Terran versus Protoss-y. We see the Terran somewhere else on the map. The Protoss confirms it early on so that they don't take the fast expand. You want to know if it's in the Terran's base as well, because expand if they're going to go for a quick one themselves. But you see the double gas, which tells after a Reaper 99% of the time. So cybernetics core, and let's find out where this goes. How aggressive does SpeCial want to be?
I don't think, well, unless he goes for the proxy factory here, maybe this could be some weak tank even, it could also just be Marine Cyclone. We'll see where he takes it. Stats, of course, has shown us that he likes proxy with his own proxy, going for that Stargate, but that's a little bit, as a Protoss, of course, you're going to be able to kill a couple of SCVs in the main base of the Terran, but if you need to fight Cyclones, you can straight up end losing.
Interesting to think about going for that Stargate follow-up that he's done so far as his response to the proxy every game, and there it is, that Stargate on the west side, deal with it. The fast factory, okay, it's not in it. Not going to be able to get a fast Widow Mine to defend, and we've also seen him just kind of ease to repair a little bit to buy the time as well. So I'm very curious if he takes this up at any point, but so far it seems he really likes sticking to the Cyclone.
I am very curious to see how this plays out, because I feel like if the Stargate was at home, you can obviously tell Stats like, hey, you can actually just go. Stalker does pretty damn good against the one base scouting, and he finds it. He finds the Stargate again on the left side. Maybe he hasn't totally seen it yet, but he's going to see it soon, because that is a big red. So we'll see missile turret. eBay. He built the eBay at home this game.
He did that very quickly, and you know, I guess he's already adjusted himself. He's saying, well, Stats has been going for Stargate every. If I'm going to build my tech on the other side of the map, the only missile turret, and yeah, you can do some cheeky stuff. You can park an Oracle, a few SCVs here and there, but Cyclones come back to defend. Barracks is floating home. He could get a quick tech lab on it, try to commit to a one-base push like we saw, like we have seen so far. But there you go. The turret just says hi to the Oracle. Bye, Oracle.
Going to be a little bit disappointed. The Cyclones are going to start working on
really
this
nice.
Stargate on the left side of the map.
I love this call because you talked about it. It's really well. It's going to Robo facility to follow this up. Widowmine gets one of the stalkers, but being able to deny even further harassment capability, only having one Oracle, no Phoenix, is really nice. These Widowmine.
Yeah, but both minor skirmishes in the beginning of the game that are very important. Even a Revelation didn't pick off a single Widowmine. Stats is still on one base, already lost SpeCial. I'm feeling pretty good about his opening so far. And you know what's one of the picking off a Stargate as a Terran player? Is that there is no Phoenix, and Phoenixes are not just very good against Banshees.
So he does spot. Of course, the Phoenix are going to be able to chase down Banshees really easily because he can't get them. That hurts. But cancels the Banshee, cancels the Cloak. He's going to build a Raven, which you would also. There was one on the map, so he should at least be able to build this, send it back. He's got the command center coming in, and it looks like that with a couple of these Cyclones to try and do some early pressure from Stats.
Yeah, do you think that Stats could potentially go for a Prism here and try?
If he does, then I really like the Raven. I mean, but Interference Matrix is one of the most powerful abilities that's been added. Using that to shut down a Prism is also huge.
Let's talk. The right
he started
side.
Cloak again. He's like, I promise, it's Cloak Banshees.
Late. Of course, the command center is being built. I mean, that SpeCial has an insane economic advantage, but how often are you looking at a TVP where Terran is expand is almost done, while Pro yet?
So here's my concern, Rotterdam. You mentioned this on the last map, is that the ramp that goes to is, we do have SpeCial getting a bunker on the high ground. This is really important. My said Stalkers can kind of poke that front going up a ramp. So even if you can kill the observer, that's nice, but you can't, it happens, but you don't want it.
Home though, right? And
yes.
I think, wow, look at that very fast disruptor bay, or Robo Bay.
Disruptor Bay, that's one way to call it.
I wonder what that's for. We'll keep a close eye on it. Of course, you know, he likes Colossus, but this feels too early for Colossus. He doesn't really have any that up. Could be for a Speed Prism. This is one of those games where a Speed Prism Stim is already on the way, first Immortal starting too. Now, of course, his factory means that he's able to build a tank. And that tank is going to allow area where the Stalkers currently are at. And then it's still really bad for our Terran.
Shout out to the awareness, by the way, on the part of Stats. He knows he wants to head up. He knows there's a Raven, but he's got the Observer in that more around itself.
The NTF2 mode.
Yeah. But it's also just outside the range of the Cyclone, so they can't lock onto it. The Marines aren't going to... And the Raven, you're not going to try to drop an auto turret to snipe that Observer, so he sends the Raven across. I'll try to get a few probes. It's better than nothing. And it is going to be the... As it seems. That Siege Tank, ooh, losing that would be catastrophic. Picks off the tank for just a Stalker, and that is going to... So here comes the auto turret harass. We have one...
But a lot of lost mining time as well, and that really hurts for a Protoss that doesn't have it. I think this Raven arrest is paying off, but you're right, what a snipe there.
So important, and that Observer could only just see that bit of a lip by his base too. If he puts it by the... See that.
That's unreal. I mean, this Raven is doing work though, that's a lot of... Even though Stats is doing a great job in slowing SpeCial down, SpeCial's all favored to some degree and slowing down. SpeCial aware yet of the Robotics Bay and of the Disruptors? Has he seen hints of it? Yes, he did. At least the Robo Bay.
That's really important. The Raven was able, so he was already building siege tanks to try and deal with the Stalker pressure. Out for him, he says, hey, well, I could just continue to keep building siege tanks. SpeCial likes to respond to this style, and that Observer is going to... The Raven, nope. Oh, nope, he got it. Nice.
Terran players like to play against Disruptors, right? And above all, a lot of Terran players really it in the first place, but then I feel like there's often two options. Either you create out and center. Disruptors are good, but mostly by other units.
You also have to be careful firing those things around your own base as well.
Exactly, because they ropes of your mineral line. You don't want that. The other approach with Terran players is that he wins the race here. I'm going to get a lot of tanks, Liberators, maybe some at the road.
Ooh. Well, okay, so we got the Disruptors pushing the army back in the center. Exposed, gets picked off, but I do believe he was able to, he was moving that medevac into the main to try and get us. And that one pylon was very exposed. He's going to try to go for some warp. Battery is there to help keep things alive, but boy, oh boy, that one pylon is sure carrying. Yeah, Cyclone's trying to kill.
I would love to see those Cyclones actually work on that pylon, Nate. I mean, sure, there was a shield battery that was going to be, but I absolutely believe that SpeCial could have taken it. That many gateways, especially if you're moving around with an army in the middle of the map.
I mean, one important thing to keep in mind here. Very even cadence between two players when it comes to taking the bases, and it's very often that we see the Forges early that we talk about get the third a bit faster than the Terran. Does take a little bit of with how much he commits here.
And he's a little bit out of position as well. Now Blink is finishing to keep this Nexus safe, but you know, massive on power as the Oracle gets picked off on the top side of the map. That's only for SpeCial. The work account is insane.
He doesn't need to attack right now. What he needs to do is defend his third vacation. It's a powerful army from Stats, but as a team, and you're keeping pace in terms of expanding, you really just want to make sure by Disruptor shot out on the field while you're multitasking.
Yeah, even though it maybe could have gotten even more, I actually think they really did a reasonable amount of damage. Ooh, that Purifier Nova didn't actually go totally forward. This will get this pylon and maybe a Stalker or two. About it, but that's still not a bad trade at all.
Two Stalkers and a pylon there. I mean, across the other side of the map, not bad. These Disruptors. Shots off, though, onto the army of SpeCial. Some of the bio is still there, but back to what we were talking about before. SpeCial has shown us a bit of his range. Tanks, we're not seeing that Widowmine style that we saw to kick off map number 1 and then hoping for in this match. And one of the things that SpeCial will do is also get that Liberator range at a decent speed. Liberators with range do an amazing job of pushing units back. If you can get upgrades for the huge impacts on your ability.
Second Forge going down. War Prism speed is currently being researched. High Templar Archives is going down as well. This is now in a phase where he says like, all right, I've got these Disruptors and I'm going to one thing that's very, very difficult for Terran, it's attacking into the IO. You can't really do that because we just saw what happens. They just run back, they shoot forward fire Novas, and you end up losing a lot of supply. So you got to do it with tech for a long time.
Another thing I love that SpeCial has been doing this in his Met Series vs. Classic as well in round of 16 is the Sensor Tower. Great tool because those fast side as far as the Protoss units go. He has a little bit of time to reposition. Like we were saying, the Liberators. This down earlier on, probably the only thing I'd be a little bit nervous about, but since he's doing this instead of Nue.
Wow, he's right on the edge. He's playing with fire there, but this Prism is incredibly fast. Main base, he probably, wow, actually it's double
he's
turret.
Done a good job with
but
turrets.
I still think on the left.
Yeah, especially if that he's got there. We have turret gets a few shots.
Wow,
now the
reaction
Marines.
time, though, Nate. That's
so
reaction
fast.
time.
He's a quick boy, and now we've got Liberators sieged up on the third base. This Liberator's going to look like force a couple of defensive wheel there, and
Damn.
the probes.
Oh my
goodness! Hits the same time, and he's going to be able to snipe it. Running away now. The Stalkers are going to try to give shots, and those disruptors in a good spot. The Warp Prism finally finds its way. Reacts in record time. We do not see those SCVs getting slaughtered too badly. He's just bringing the army home. Stimming it a lot on the way is we might as well. 2 is on the way for both players. I'm kind of astounded by that.
I mean, there's still Liberators that could maybe in that corner a little bit further.
Yeah,
Just
I'd like to see him use any Liberators to try and get rid of that. He starts a Viking too.
And just now, SpeCial looked very good there for that minute of the game. The way that he reacted with speed, and then at the same time he was dealing way more damage with his Liberators units towards that fourth base. He was outplaying stats there for a bit. That prism, the way he was doing, obviously such a fantastic job on wasn't the damage that SpeCial was actually finding.
Scouting depot drops the Zealots onto it. Good play. This has been able to improve this game. Earlier macro game at least, and the recall. One Viking boy finished that off, and well, we've got another Prism who lived on our hands.
Would have got the job done, Nate.
Would have done all the scenes and character as well.
Storm is close to finishing up. This time Stalkers are in position to siege tanks. Well, you gotta be a little bit careful. SpeCial a little bit sloppy there. And
yeah, I do like this. This is one thing to flip up on is unsieging every tank at once. He's inching his way forward. He's saying tanks while while they're all moving at once, and now we get a first person.
I want to see where that prism is. Obviously, the prism was very low on HP, but the prism is going to be very, very important here against. Although, well, there saw him losing it against just a few Marines on the top side. Nate, that is a massive
win out of the sales form. Now here we have an where Stats is saying, I'm going to push in towards this third base, try to make my way to the siege tanks to defend as that bio pushes its way into the natural.
He got Prism less than a minute ago, so he's going to have to run back all the way to this Nexus. Maybe he's going to, and even the Forges are a little bit vulnerable.
And you deny the fourth base, you shut down the natural. His third command center, there's the SCVs repairing, and leaving on the way of shutting down that type of big counterattack play that Stats did.
Even though he's absolutely still in this, he's got disruptors, he's got raids finishing up soon, he's chasing down these medevacs as well. It does feel like every single time it feels there's a little bit of momentum on the side of our Protoss. Or another Nexus.
Ghost Academy starting up now. A way to mitigate those storms that will be heading his way, but with keeping the economy at pace is with the denial of that natural, the denial of the fourth. He's got his planetary here. Big play come in and try to snipe this base and get out of dodge real quick. Is he going to be able in time? No, he's going to retreat.
There simply isn't that much firepower. There are storms though. I do think he doesn't have to run into his army, but will Stats run into his army? These massive risks.
And here we have a big side, 31 SCVs mining at that base. It's a lot of his potential economy. Particularly good against these units. Nice save with the medevac to pick the army, bring the bio back home, keep those alive. His units on the other side of the map denies the fourth base again, but they're still high. He needs to pull back again as we see Stats is going to rebuild that fourth.
There is still an army on the right top his tank line. Man, Stats is doing a phenomenal job, but just there would have been a couple
without a prism, by the way.
Yeah, he just ran them in, but it was only not that great against Zealots by itself. You need that backup of a couple. Wow, look at Stats. He's like, hey, that went great. Let's do it again.
Send SpeCial, recognize, getting pulled. SCV transfer going from that base. There is plenty of bio here to deal with these Zealots. Having a couple of units to defend has also been great at watching the left map. Acid plants.
But I mean, Stats losing that Nexus, that really hurts outmining his opponent. Start running dry. This is Legacy of the Void. I mean, SpeCial's gonna find his map.
To know exactly where everything is. So he has that idea. He says, okay, well, the army's been split up a little bit far.
To look at Stats and the way that this point, he wants to be very, very aggressive here. He lands a storm coming in from the north side, though.
And this is a critical moment right now. SCVs, 4 of them, get brought down, but having those tanks to defend is really crucial at the same time. A little bit more difficult areas. Just that one EMP, another Ghost is about to finish.
And I think that he's controlling 2 massive armies, that but he's doing it with such confidence that it feels solid, it feels stable. Shots, everything goes down. But this time, yeah, Stats is ready for it.
Yep. Finally brings that completing. Look at this. He's going to be able to put it when you want to take this base. Good to have that information about where the pro and all over the map. He's been pushing out in a lot of different now. Is really nice. Great for bullying away all that AoE. Kill the disruptors if they get in range.
I mean, Stats' army still makes this feel like such a chaotic game. This Orbital is very exposed, so magic done with all of his tanks.
This has been the really out. You get really stretched out, really exposed. We do have a tank helping to defend the planetary, but in. Marines getting hit by the storms, and SpeCial's army He's running everything back home. The supply heavily favoring Stats. Being pinched. Now he has to run into wants to defend his base.
More orbitals going down. It would be very bad if there was all of the EMPs I think they were looking for. Yes, it is. More storms even. And all High Templar is full on energy. I mean, and if he avoids the tanks, Nate, I think Stats will move.
Down 100 supply. The observer sees the economy of Stats. Stats isn't investing his resources very heavily and making the most of it. More of what he's already got. Ooh, nice storm. As good as those tanks are for defending, the more base stuff out, those tanks become less efficient as there's fewer of them defending.
I think if the way that Stats has played throughout this best of 5 is that he's all, even if he has nothing to strike with, if he needs to buy time, he always makes it seem like he's not. He wasn't needed, and eventually he got the.
It's a low econ game, but it's just one base of mining effectively for SpeCial now is back. The Immortals are going to break their way into the right side, hit that bio, and SpeCial, he doesn't have any side storms running back to defend.
I think that Stats has games that SpeCial played against Classic, and he knew that there was no need to rally. Eventually he's going to do it, and this could still be a little bit painful. Let's go down.
GG Stats in 1 over in a phenomenal bloody series.
I loved it, Nate. Back and forth by the games. I think SpeCial played an awesome series. Stats just looked like he looked fantastic. Top Protoss players throughout, not just this year, but over the last few years in Legacy of the Void.
Really incredible to see the control, the poise come out of him, going to shake the hand of SpeCial. Got a bit of that history at BlizzCon, who has still had such an awesome, really good Christmas, great, and excited to see how far he's going to make it this BlizzCon. Let's hear what he has to say on the main.
Thank you. Congratulations, Stat. You are moving on to the round of 4 years. So what does it mean on the most important stage of the year? 일단 축하드리고요. 올해 가장 중요한 진출할 소감 얘기해 주세요.
저번 연도 하게 떨어져가지고 이번 연도 때는 진짜 16강에서만 한 달 기간 준비를 이런 4강이라는 결과가 나왔던 것 같아요.
Last time I fell really sadly in the round of 16. So let's just not lose and really hard in this past month, and I think that's why I was for. And now in this series against that last game, because it did look like such a fun game for us. Very end. 대해서 물어보고 싶은데 했었는데 어떻게 보면 좀 스트레스 받은 경기였던 것 같은데 끝까지
자신 있진 않았고 저도 게임이 너무 엎치락뒤 게임이 좀 불리해졌었고 정말 마지막까지도 긴장은 4경기였던 것 같아요.
So he's confident until the last second when he GG'd. It went back and so GG'd and tapped out. Let go of the sort of focus and nerves that I was feeling, and I'm so glad that I am. You'll be facing now. SOS is a player you played twice this year. Does that give you some confidence headed into that round of 4? 일단 다음 상대는 두번 만났는데 두 번 다 이겼었어요. 그래서 그것 때문에
일단은 성주가 아니라는 것에서 한편으로는 좀 마음이 놓이기는 하지만은 그래도 김유진 선수가 유진이가 워낙에 하루날 저도 준비를 해 와야 될 것 같아요.
So he says, I'm super glad that it's in the round of 4. But that being said, I am not going to fantastic, especially when it comes to chess. He's a very creative player in that regard. So in the day that I have, congratulations to you.
For the game. It looked like it could have gone either way, but stunning parts of that
in the game. They barely had a warning shot. He was like, okay, no, I'll not fight tanks. I'll just keep going around. And it was just said it on the desk, like Stats was acting strong when he wasn't necessarily weak, and act weak when you're strong.
Final moments with those tanks and things like that, was that the downfall, especially in that game on your side when dealing with someone like Stats?
Yeah, absolutely. Strategic mistake. It was Stats multiple times in this series using Lost and Found game, for instance, would lead, but Stats was so good at counterattacking with Zealots, so good at rotating bad, pulling SpeCial home. It was just a master. Buying time we needed to, engaging when he wanted to, and this game is... Cyclones look silly. 5 minutes. All SpeCial wanted to do was take the fight, and Stats...
A bit of a masterclass as you... Looking your way now, looking at the proxies that kind of came in throughout this with those proxies, and some paid off, some
Protosses really have started to understand how to deal with those proxies. With standard, if you're just gonna do nothing, get a quick nexus, that's what those proxies are. These coming and reacting to it. It's work, and even the army movement. Like Pig just mentioned it. Same thing with of stats. Like it didn't look like my games. Like my games is like Cyclones come. With that's what he did, and just fantastic series from him.
I think Rotterdam made a good point. Bit of a step back, looked at what Classic had brought against SpeCial and kind of
knows how to prepare, and he completely style for that. And again, we're seeing why Stats is a player that upgrades all the tools that he needs to get a closer. And in a lot of those games, eventually when it got stretched out that far, Stats was exact.
Let's see that we have matches so far, of course. Lower side of the bracket in a few moments' time. SOS and Stats have round of 4. They've claimed $42,000 so far. At least $40,000 challenging for $280,000, of course, later on, which is things really.
Yeah, the round of 8, and you go, it's a bit of a shame, but when you lose in the quarterfinals or the semis of Con, it's like, oh, that opportunity missed. It's something where and your name goes up on one of these banners hanging up in the hall, every StarCraft player's dream.
Let's take a look down things, of course, and our matches are as following up against Rogue, Dark versus SpeCial, and do not go anywhere after have that ASL versus KSL match. Todd, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna. I will not be questioning the.
A lot of money to be played for here. Nick, looking forward to.
Yeah, Rogue being the former world champion, hyped up or talked about Rogue anywhere near as much coming into this because we had Maro, who's dead now, by the way. He's out of the tournament. See, the condition is Rogue in can beat Rogue.
Yeah,
that is a possibility.
Sometimes the reverse when it gets swept in reverse. So I think all eyes are on him. He's the last Terran.
Let's see. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's time to go to a global finals. One more series to come for our round of 8, and then, of course, our Brood War showman.